a lot is being made of the so-called bounty gate going on with Gregg Williams, who you happen to have the opportunity to coach with yourself. What's kind of your impressions with what's going on with Gregg? Does it seem really just?
Well, first of all, I think that we ought to wait until the whole thing is the investigation, and we make sure that we have the facts of it. And I'll say this, and a coach normally is going to defend a coach whenever possible. I know I am, for sure. But if what has been reported actually did happen, there's no way for you to justify that. That's inexcusable. And when I was with Gregg up with the Tennessee Titans, there was none of that went on. The only thing that happened, which is totally different from that, is that if you got a fumble recovery or a pass interception or a sack on the quarterback or a tackle inside the 20-yard line, something of that nature, then guys would throw in maybe $100 or some deal like that, and they would split it up, after a game. And that was fun. That was all in fun. But never was there anything mentioned about going out to hurt somebody, to knock somebody out of a game, to have the intent on injuring someone was never even mentioned, never, that's just not part of football. Let's say that it should not ever be part of football that you're going to go out there with the intent of injuring somebody on another team.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I've heard countless stories of how Gregg actually makes it a point to kind of create unity among his players, making them go out to eat the night before a game and stuff like that. Are those kind of more the accurate portrayals of the man rather than like this whole bounty gate type thing going on?
I personally don't think there's anything wrong with a bunch of guys going out, the night before a game or 2 nights before a game and having supper and sitting around and visiting with each other and all that stuff and having some camaraderie and all that. To me, that's all a positive thing toward teamwork, part of building a unit. But to me, that's totally different than this thing of going out and trying to gain an advantage over another team by going out there and trying to injure somebody on the other team.
But is that more of what you saw, though, with Gregg? I mean, you saw him more or less trying to create that unity, not so much you saw all these things that are coming out in the paper.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if most coaches are going to do things to try to promote unity and teamwork. That's part of any team sport, is being able to play as a team and not as individuals.
Yeah, it almost sounds like with this whole thing kind of going on that if the word bounty wasn't actually thrown into the mix, that this might not even be an issue at all. You think it's just more of one of those things people are clinging on to that word?
That's quite a powerful word, and there's a lot of connotations when you throw that word into the mix. That word was never used in a building, a football building that I was in college or pro. That word was never used.
But also, I mean, you can kind of look at it, I think, like, if you're in a boxing match and your trainer goes and tells you, I want you to go out there and kill him. I mean, there's a context to what you're taking out of that. I mean, you're not really trying to go in there and kill the guy. It's sending a message to try and put a beating on the guy and win the fight. I think, is that more along the lines of you think he was going with?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, but because I wasn't in that meeting, in those meetings, but you make a very good point in that what happens, a guy goes up there and says, hey, I want you to go kill him. Well, the realization of it is that you want somebody to do what you mean, not what you say.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, even reading more into this whole situation, I mean, it almost seems kind of hypocritical that Goodell is pushing for like 18 regular season games, yet he's supposedly out to protect the players. I mean, I don't see how taking on more regular season games and limiting the preseason, how he's actually justifying doing that.
Well, like I say, there's no justification for doing the wrong thing.
Do you think players and coaches are kind of walking on thin ice with a lot of these new rules that are going on? I mean, players have been...
Scott, this is not a new rule. I mean, that's unethical to go out there and promote entering a player on another team to gain an advantage. I mean, that's why it's such a shock to me that would be something that it makes proven that is actually what happened. I mean, obviously, you can't justify that act.
But isn't it also one of those things? I mean, you're not going out essentially to try and injure a player to make them like out a couple of games, a season, really any of that. But I mean, like the saying goes, I want you to go out there and take the guy's head off. I mean, it's figurative. I mean, when you say that, I mean, obviously, if you can limit having the best opposition against you, you're going to want to do that, but you're going to want to do it within the confines of the game. I mean, I assume that things weren't dirty within that system. It would just happen to be there's incentive with hurting a guy, so to speak, I guess.
Well, what happens is I mean, you just made some statements, but what you did is you went and explained the situation afterwards. If you take your explanation afterwards off, then I mean, that's some pretty strong language.
So I mean, the way you see it is, I mean, given we both don't know all the facts and everything, but everything sounds more like he's trying to inspire his players. I mean, he's always been known everywhere he's been, be it the Bills, the Saints, or with the Titans, of really invoking that, like, strong personality of his defense, of powerful, strong guys that will lay it all on the line. Could it be that those incentives were kind of misconstrued? I mean, even with the money and stuff being thrown with it?
I am hoping that is the case, because I'm hoping that the things that have been reported actually did not happen. But I don't know that, and like I said, I mean, that's what any coach would hope would happen, is that this actually did not go on the way that it was reported. But like I say, I mean, there's no justification for doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, and
I mean, people want to go and watch a game, and they want to watch collisions, big collisions.
Yeah,
they do not want to go out there with the idea of someone having the intent of injuring the person on the other team. That is a big difference, I think, Scott.
But from that same rationale, though, aren't you trying to hit somebody hard enough to send a message? Kind of like along those...
Absolutely. You're trying to hit them to give them a message. There's no doubt that you want to do that. But are you going to hit them of injuring the person.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny.
See, that's a whole different ball game when you start talking that language.
So I mean, from that rationale too, then I mean, how do you take it with how a football player like James Harrison on the Steelers constantly being fined? I mean, they call him a headhunter, but he's probably one of the most aggressive guys right now in the NFL. How do you tell a guy like, okay, I want you to go and pulverize the opposition, but right as you're about to hit, let up a little bit so we don't hurt him? How do you do that?
All I'm saying is if you're coaching a James Harrison, what you do is you show the guy what are the rules of the game. And the rules of the game have certain things that you're allowed to do and certain things that you're not allowed to do. And if you want to be able to help this football team, the best way that you possibly can is you want to be the most aggressive that you possibly can be under the rules of the game. You go out and you go and do something that's outside the rules of the game, what happens is three bad things happen.
What?
Number one, in no particular order, you hurt your team because you're going to get a penalty. Number two, you hurt yourself because what you end up doing is that it ends up costing you money and your reputation. And number three, you end up injuring, possibly giving a better chance of injuring somebody else when you go out there and perform a quote illegal hit by the rules of the game. I don't know of anyone that does not, any coach that goes out there and tells somebody to go and play outside the rules of the game.
So if
there's no way that I believe that Gregg Williams ever told somebody to play outside the rules of the game on Sunday afternoon.
Well, if these findings happen
I guarantee you he would not, if he did, gosh, that would be awful. For him to go out and say to go hit somebody outside the rules of the game.
Well, if these findings end up going against him, I mean, what do you think the penalty should be for these actions?
Okay.
If they find stuff against him with this whole thing with the bounty and stuff, what do you think the proper actions the NFL should take against him and his team?
Well, the bottom line of the thing is if all of this went on, to me, the question is, does the commissioner want to stop it? And the answer to that, I believe, would be yes. He wants to stop it. And if he wants to stop it, all he's got to do is do two things, and it'll be stopped. Number one, you got to suspend the coach. Because you go and you start talking about a job or a career, and you go and you suspend the coach for a year and without pay, then there's no coach that's going to jeopardize not being paid for a year or some deal like this. And number two is that you take away draft choices of that particular team. So what happens is that there is no GM or no head coach or no owner that's going to sit there and say, look, we can take a chance on that. It's worth the draft choices that we lost. I mean, there's nobody that's going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that happen with New England, have you seen anything happen on any team since that happened? The Spygate deal?
No, nothing that's came up unless they're very incognito, I guess.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is and there were draft choices that were taken away from New England. And if I'm not mistaken, they fined Coach Belichick $500,000 on it.